Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast. Season 2, Episode 9. We'll kick it off here momentarily with the audio podcast part of the show. Hello, everybody. So as you're joining, let us know where you're listening from or viewing from today. Hope to have a good chat with you all, this being a legislative update episode.
Seems like it's been a while since we did one of these.
Well, it's been at least 1 month. I can pretty much guarantee you that.
But for some reason, I'm thinking maybe we didn't do one last month, or I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Somebody will call me out.
I couldn't tell you because I don't remember that far back.
Yes.
But yeah, maybe it's been a while. Who knows? Hey, Chad, thanks for joining. Although he says, hey, neighbors, it must mean that in a general sense because you can't possibly be neighbors with both of us, both me and Matthew, since, he's,
the
total opposite side of the country, dang near.
We could be spiritual neighbors, right?
That's true. That's true. Hey, Hopper. Hey, Bobby. Thank you for joining, guys.
Hey.
So again, if you're just joining, we are kicking off the 9th episode of our second season. I love it how our first season's 500 episodes long. Season 2, Episode 9. It's the legislative update episode. So got some good stories to cover with you guys. We're going to talk some more about the Supreme Court Caniglia ruling that is we talked a little bit about it a couple episodes ago in our industry news episode, I believe. Said that we would come back to it some more in the legislative episode. So yeah, we're going to hit on that some more. I've had some more thoughts on that. It still remains to be seen how that might or might not impact red flag law related stuff, but there's still some important things there. Talk about the ATF trying to expand its powers as it relates to what defines a firearm. That's going to be really important. We've got a call to action for you all on that. And let's see, some constitutional carry bills in a couple of states. Actually, 3 different states we're going to discuss that all recently passed, that all recently were looking at constitutional carry and or passed it. One law in particular in Montana that is kind of up in the air a little bit. I mean, it was passed and signed into law by the governor, but now is facing some court challenges. So we'll give you an update on all that. So, hey, who else we got here? Yeah, Chad, metaphorical neighbor sense. Yes. I don't recall where Chad is or if he's even commented in the past what state or what region of the country. Like if you don't want to give state even, you can say south, southeast, northeast, whatever, Midwest. Don't care. But hey, Chad. Hopper. Adrian from Georgia. Hello. Rodney from Indiana. Gary. Hello, Gary. And guys, if you happen to be in one of the states that we're going to talk about today, let us know that too. Again, we're going to be talking about Texas, Louisiana, as well as Montana. And then the other stuff is a more national level issue, or really 2 different ones. Jeff from Missouri. Hello. Rudy from Indio, California. Chad's in Brighton. Well, Chad, you are practically my neighbor, brother. Awesome. Brighton, Colorado. Hopper. Yes, we are brothers. My brother, Kenny from California as well. All right. Let's get the show on the road. Alexander also watching from Brighton, Colorado. Look at that. 2 of them. Brighton, a fast-growing little community northeast of the Denver metro. I've had actually a couple friends move out that way in relatively recent history in the last year or so. Yeah. Lots of houses being built and different things. Anyway, all right, let's do it. John from Yukon. Hey, John. That's one I do know and remember. And we'll be seeing John at the Guardian conference. All righty, let's kick off the audio show. Now, if this is your first time joining us live, that is on Facebook or YouTube, this is simulcast to both platforms. We do we do the show live on video, okay? But we still are, and will say so continually, that we are a podcast first and a video show second. Meaning that the place to catch the Concealed Carry podcast, I mean, of course, you're always welcome to watch past episodes on YouTube or on Facebook, following our Facebook pages, or Facebook page, obviously the Concealed Carry Facebook page, and or subscribing to YouTube. You can do that, okay? But also for easy on-the-go access, go to your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn, golly, there's so many of them now too. It's hard to even keep track of them all. But we're pretty much on all of the major podcast players or apps out there. So that's where you can find the podcast. Subscribe, listen on the go, on your commute, on your jog, whatever, So anyway, we welcome you all, and now we begin the recorded audio portion that will go out to the podcast feed. So let's do it in 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 2, Episode 9. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network, brought to you by XS Sites. Today is Thursday, June 3rd, 2021, and I am your host, Riley Bowman. And I'm joined by Matthew Maruster.
Still kicking, man. Still here.
Graybeard.
Yeah, it's getting there. My mom just commented on to me the other day. I was FaceTiming her, and she was like, "Man, you're getting really gray." So that was good.
Yeah, the beard's coming back.
Yeah.
Isn't it a little hot for that?
Not yet. We had a little cold snap here in central Ohio, so.
Yeah, actually, I did hear a little bit about that as far as like that region of the country being a little bit cooler, also getting some rain here and there. So
yes, substantial rain.
I was watching some of my buddies over the weekend shooting the Mid-Atlantic Sectional Championship, PSA, and it was wet for them. Anyway, we are here with a legislative updates episode. If you are new to this or new to the podcast, once per month, typically on the first Wednesday of the month, since we typically record these on Wednesdays, although today is Thursday because we got off by a day in the schedule for various reasons. But anyway, once per month, we do a legislative update episode. We also have a couple other episodes we do once per month, such as our Justified Saves. Also, industry news and gear reviews is the other one that we do. And so here we are doing legislative updates, and we got a lot of great stories for you today. Just kind of preview a little bit of it. We're going to talk some more about the Supreme Court Caniglia ruling, which is really, really important. We've had some more thoughts on that, so we'll break that down some more. Plus, there's some words directly from Mr. Caniglia himself, which I think is kind of interesting to give his perspective. We're going to talk about the ATF trying to redefine what a firearm is, and by that, a firearm is defined as a frame or receiver. There is a part of a firearm that's labeled as a frame or receiver, and that is the part that's serialized. They are looking to expand what that is defined as, and that is very, very important for us to understand and maybe do something about. So we'll be talking about that quite a bit here today as well. We're also going to talk about constitutional carry bills out of the states of Louisiana as well as Texas. One bit of good news, one bit of not so good news, and also some laws out of Montana dealing with also constitutional carry, but also campus carry. So stay tuned for all of that. These are important updates, of course. We do our best to bring this to you. Unfortunately, due to time, we can't always cover everything that's going on in the legislative world regarding the Second Amendment, but we do our best. Today's episode, first, though, I should mention, is sponsored by CCW Safe. CCWSafe.com, of course, is the website. Podcast listeners automatically save 10% off a CCW Safe membership, which I highly recommend, just by using the coupon code CC Podcast. CC for concealed carry. CC podcast will save you 10% off of a CCW Safe membership, which is my self-defense legal coverage membership of choice. So definitely encourage you to, if that's something you're looking at, if you're looking at getting that type of coverage or membership for the first time, I would encourage you to do research. But for me, I did a lot of research, and for me, the CCW Safe is the best fit. You can also go to concealedcarry.com/insurance, which is a short link to a page where we break down and define and explain the various different programs that are out there. I think if you do a lot of the research yourself as well, you may very well end up with the same choice that I did and choose CCW Safe. Again, save 10% by using the code CC Podcast if you are joining. Guardian Nation members, those that are members of our membership program, which grants you access to tons of online training, video content, and other content as well, but also a bunch of industry and product discounts, and that includes a 20% discount off of CCW Safe, which is substantial, I might add. It's almost, I mean, you basically get like 2 months free, maybe actually a little bit more than 2 months free, just by using the special Guardian Nation members only discount with a CCW Safe membership. So, and plus you get a huge discount off of the Guardian conference, the training conference we're putting on in the city, the hometown, the headquarters of CCW Safe, which is Oklahoma City, of course, the Oklahoma City Gun Club in September. So members save big time on that. But anyway, super excited to have this podcast sponsored by CCW Safe. Super excited to have them as our title sponsor of the 2021 Guardian Conference. Also a sponsor of the 2021 Guardian Conference is XS Sights, who is they are the title sponsor now of the Concealed Carry podcast. I've been a user of XS Sights, particularly their F8 night sights, for several years now, and I like them a lot. They work great for me on my pistols. I've got them on my SIGs. I've got them on my Glocks. Those of you that have known me a long time know that I like the F8 sights from XS Sights. I'd encourage you to give them a look, or any of their other products that you may find on their site at xssights.com. Again, that is the letter X, the letter S as in sights, but xssights.com. And we appreciate them for being title sponsor of the podcast. Guys, thank you for your support of our sponsors, because without that support, we would not have them as sponsors, and we may not be able to continue producing the podcast. Now 509 episodes in. So,
wow.
Yeah. Season 2, episode 9. Crazy. All righty. So let's get into it, Matthew. Again, we mentioned we were going to come back to the Caniglia ruling from the United States Supreme Court. You want to give us kind of your thoughts on that? And you know, we've got an article here. Of course, guys, if you want to see the different stories and articles that we will be sharing here today, you'll find links to everything in the show notes. Show notes, by the way, can be found on the website concealedcarry.com. Looking for this episode in our posts, you'll see the show notes there. But you'll also find the show notes a lot of times in most of your podcast apps as well. I can't speak to exactly how you access those for every app, but a lot of times, like tapping on the album art of the podcast will bring up show notes, or swiping up may do that as well. And you'll see links to each of these different. Not only the stories, but also to our sponsors and that kind of stuff. But first, we have this story out of Rhode Island, where the town of Cranston, their police department seized a man's guns, and by that, his name is Edward Caniglia, and so now this will be known as the Caniglia ruling. But they seized his guns in 2015. It took him 6 years to arrive at this ruling. By the way, I thought it was interesting, Matthew. This jumped out at me as I read through this article from the Providence Journal, providencejournal.com. He said for him, this is not about being awarded damages. Mm-hmm. He was not trying to get like rich off of this or anything like that. He just simply wanted to have his rights reaffirmed and have his legal costs in pursuing this reimbursed.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was, a lot of people be like, well, hey, this has caused me a lot of pain and headache, so like I want my legal costs covered, but also $2 million or, something like that. That's not what this was about for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you mentioned that we had covered it on the industry news episode, but not so in depth, legally speaking, just kind of a notification that that the ruling was made, because it is a pretty big ruling, and a lot of people jumped on it as a Second Amendment case, but we kind of pointed out back then it really, I mean, it has Second Amendment implications, but it's really a Fourth Amendment case. But in general, and if you're not familiar with the case in general, this is what happened. So Cranston police. Let me back up. This Edward Caniglia and his wife are living in this home, and they have a dispute. They're having an argument, and Edward has a firearm. It's unloaded, handgun. He puts it on the table during the dispute and tells his wife to shoot him. Obviously, he's probably speaking, kind of not literally. He doesn't want her to shoot him, but he's upset. Not the smartest thing to do, right? So she leaves the house and goes to her sister's house, I believe, or a hotel for the night to kind of let things cool off. In the meantime, the next morning she calls her husband. He doesn't answer the phone. She's concerned because she thinks he might have killed himself or done something. Not any specific threats. She didn't tell police that he made any specific threats that he was going to kill himself, but just that he had a firearm in the house, and that now he's not answering the phone when she called after having a dispute the night before. Police show up, talk to him, and the reports is that the police kind of say, hey, we don't think that you're, a danger to yourself or others, where we are going to take physical custody of you and compel you or take you to a center to get evaluated for mental health or anything. But we just recommend that you go and get checked out and make sure that everything's okay. And he has some concerns about his firearms. And according to Caniglia, Edward, the police say, no, we're not going to seize your firearms. That's fine. And he says on that promise that, okay, I'll go. So he goes on his own voluntarily. So he's not committed. He goes voluntarily. Police seize his firearms. They don't have a warrant. They don't have any exigency. There was no crime that this is evidence in. It's not, it's not illegal contraband or anything like that. So they seize it, and then they use the justification of community caretaking, basically the same thing that you would do if there was a car on the side of the road and the police had to impound that vehicle because the owner was, taken to the hospital or something. So they take temporary custody of it, of the vehicle. So they use that as justification to take his firearms from inside his home without a warrant and without his consent. And he filed a suit saying, you violated my rights. I never gave you consent, and so on and so forth. So Supreme Court took 5 years, but the Supreme makes it up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they rule unanimously on Edward Caniglia's behalf. And like you said, it's really interesting because a lot of people would try to seize on this and make money, and he was just like, look, I mean, this was wrong, and I want. I'm right. I was right. I'm happy that I was right. And I just want to be, compensated my time and money for my defense and everything. And and I'll let you kind of comment on the implications that it has for red flag laws, because I know that's kind of where a lot of people went to with this ruling right away.
Yeah, and as Christy is commenting on Facebook, she says community caretaking is dangerous on so many levels, easily abused, and I agree with that because it's a subjective legal doctrine, meaning that it requires judgment calls on the part of an officer or officers on the scene of whatever, looking at the situation and going, okay, here's what we got to do. And due to community caretaking, we're going to take this gun or this car, for instance, into custody. I mean, outside of the home, typically with vehicles, is probably would you agree with this, the primary or the most common community caretaking type situation that you would find?
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And that makes sense because, again, you may very well have a individual for whatever reason, whether it's a medical emergency or it's a situation where they've they've committed a crime and they've been arrested, and now you've got a vehicle that is taking up space on a public right of way, and that's typically where we run into this. That needs to be removed. The individual that's responsible for that vehicle is not able to move it themselves for a variety of reasons, and so that needs to be essentially confiscated. In that moment, that vehicle is being confiscated and towed and dealt with. But we have to go back and remind ourselves that, yes, there are some exceptions like this, but we got to remind ourselves that, when we're talking about Mr. Caniglia's situation, this is dealing with his home. And we specifically have a Fourth Amendment that reads, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized." Specifically, houses are called out in the Fourth Amendment. Obviously, vehicles didn't exist at that time. I guess wagons or carts or something did. But even in those, even those might be classified under effects or persons, property. But specifically, houses have, and very well should. I mean, we have another amendment that deals with, not being forced to house government people, soldiers, and that sort of thing. And so, our homes are and this was very unique for the United States at the time that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was put together, was authored and created. That we took a domain like a home and said, look, this has protections against the government interfering, intruding, being all up in our business. And that's pretty important. It needs to be maintained. And so, to Christy's point on Facebook, like her comment talking about how community caretaking could be really abused, that's why this case is so important, because essentially that's and there have been mixed opinions from a variety of courts throughout the country over the last however many years, where similar cases have come up and various courts have ruled one way or another in terms of whether it fit that community caretaking exception. And now we have the Supreme Court of the United States that has handed down this ruling that much more clearly defines and says, no, look, a vehicle out there in public space on public right of way or that sort of thing is very different and distinguishable from a person's home.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we recognize that there are exceptions when an officer may need to make a judgment call regarding whether it's, they show up to a home and discover that there are children unattended, at the home. Or that there's somebody having a medical emergency, or that there's somebody that has immediate threat to life. Those types of very, very clear exceptions. And even, of course, there's still some judgment and some gray area there to some degree, but it's a lot. That's a different circumstance than, well, this guy did something that we don't like, that we think might be a threat to him or somebody else. We're going to take him willingly to the hospital for an evaluation. And in that time, he's separated from his gun. He's being evaluated. That's the concern, is he may be mentally unfit and we need to have him checked out. He agreed to do so. Guess what? If he checks out, then why are we taking his guns away still?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So super important to see this ruling go the way it did, because otherwise this would open up Pandora's box as it relates to police officers in particular subjectively going, because, I mean, Matthew, tell me if I'm right or wrong in this. Are there times where cops might use the community caretaking exception to, like they're trying to find reason to use as an exception so they can find something that they think is there?
Sure. I mean, vehicle impounds, right? Like you're taking that vehicle, you do an inventory, but you're not doing a search, right? But some of the officers may look at that as a search. I'm trying to find something instead of inventorying.
Right.
It's not semantics, because there's a purpose behind a search and a purpose behind an inventory. And I think there's like a nefarious side to this, but there's also like, and what my fear was when all the red flag stuff started coming out, is there's a reaction to be like, I don't want to be the guy that doesn't seize the guns, and this guy comes and like shoots up his family and kills himself. And I don't want to be the cop that like was there and could have seized them, but I didn't. So I'm just going to err on the side of caution. So everybody along the line kind of errs on the side of caution, and then it's an overreaction, right? And then, so, I mean, we can't believe that this is the only case that this has ever happened, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is one case. I guarantee you that this has happened hundreds of times throughout the country. And so, until there's a court ruling on it, it continues, because nobody wants to be that guy or girl, whatever, that allowed this to happen, right? And so, I think if that could affect judges' rulings, like if they're given like an ex parte hearing and somebody's giving them evidence and they're like, I don't have an opposing side where this guy's justifying or speaking on his behalf, but I don't really want to. I'll err on the side of caution and issue this order to seize these firearms. He doesn't want to be the judge, or she doesn't want to be the judge that said, no, I'm denying your red flag request, and then that guy goes and shoots up a school. Yeah. I just, so, yeah.
And again, the court did not specifically, this was not taking up red flag laws and the constitutionality of those, although there may be some carryover, especially depending on how a state may define certain aspects of their red flag law. I do certainly believe that this Caniglia ruling strengthens the case against many red flag laws, and I think that's a positive thing. Mm-hmm. Because again, we've broken that down numerous times in the podcast about the dangers of red flag laws, and I mean, the Fourth Amendment is a huge concern with respect to red flag laws, and this strengthens a very important aspect of that. Again, if this ruling had gone the other way, or if the Supreme Court had elected not to rule on this or to take this case up, then we would be in a position where you would have additional cases and additional situations where law enforcement in particular, because that's usually the ones that are performing the job, where they would be potentially claiming community caretaking to then have an excuse, if you will, to go into a home. Mm-hmm. And thereby, in the process of doing so, perhaps discovering evidence readily seen and visible and that sort of thing that might then go against a person when again there's a Fourth Amendment in place, mm-hmm. and we have a reason to feel secure in our homes and in our personal effects, and that's what that's all about. So anyway, huge ruling here. I think this will and again, this was a unanimous ruling, so all 9 of the justices agreed with this. Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, very, very telling. The other thing I thought was really interesting about this case, Matthew, and I think I read this before, and knew of this, but kind of forgot about it. Because certainly the Second Amendment community is like, rah, 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 like this is a good thing, and try to take credit for it. But it was actually the ACLU that picked this case up and ran with it.
Yeah.
Which, sometimes the ACLU picks the other side as far as like goes after certain things that might, as the Second Amendment community would perceive, harm the Second Amendment. So it's just kind of interesting to kind of see that and how I think from the ACLU's perspective on this is that this is a very clear Fourth Amendment issue, regardless if there's guns involved or not. This was officers going into a home and seizing property that did not have a warrant to do so. And this case clarifies the need for a warrant to do that. So we'll see how this carries on into some of the, and I can just about promise you, if it's not already, and I haven't seen anything yet, but I can just about promise you there's going to be red flag law challenges that are going to try to connect the Caniglia ruling to the constitutionality of those red flag laws in various states. And it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Let's move on now to we got an article from ammoland.com. It's titled ATF Releases Proposed Rules for So-Called Ghost Gun Receivers and Frames. This is a really important one, guys, because basically what we're talking about here is how the ATF is exploring the idea. And by the way, this is certainly in cahoots with the Biden administration. It's very apparent and well known that the Biden transition team, way back in November, just shortly after it was announced that Biden had been elected, whether you agreed with it at that time or not, that's what the media was saying. And then the transition team was already getting to work, and they were already, like within days after the election, the Biden transition team was having conversations with the ATF and essentially trying to start the dialogue, of what the Biden administration, what their priorities would be with certain firearms related laws. And it seems pretty evident that what came out of that is this directive from the ATF to revisit, and it all circles or encircles the idea of so-called quote unquote ghost guns, right? That's the big driving thing here is, there's this perception that ghost guns are a rampant problem throughout the country. Now, by the way, to be clear, all right, okay, because we always strive for accuracy and honesty on the podcast. To be clear, are ghost guns, and by ghost gun, what are we talking? We're talking essentially homemade firearms, all right, which, by the way, homemade firearms for your own personal use and enjoyment has been something that's legal for you to build. Again, this is for we have been, since the beginning of time in this country, able to build our own firearms for our own use. That has never been in question. Okay. Now, there's certain firearms that we're not allowed, things like NFA, controlled items, that kind of thing. We're not supposed, I would debate that I think those things should be able to be made homemade. Okay, and we're talking about machine guns, silencers, suppressors, etc. But anyway, to actually just build a firearm, that has been legal. Okay. Now enter things like Polymer 80, and these companies providing products that made that much easier to do, and that's how we arrive where we are now. You go buy a Polymer 80 kit, right? And it's just a piece of plastic molded in the shape of a grip and a gun. And, you've got to do some manufacturing to it to drill some holes, make some cuts, router out some chunks of plastic, whatever, and then install a frame or frame rails into that. And then, of course, everything else is readily available for purchase as well. Your slide, your barrel, your internal parts, your trigger, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're at a time where, and this comes as a result of technology and improvements and so forth. So it's very easy for us to manufacture our own firearms. I've done it. Many others, even listening to this podcast, I'm sure have done it. And it's completely legal and has been legal, and I think is entirely appropriate. To be fair, there has been, I believe, because it's documented, there's been more and more criminals that are caught and found with self-made or homemade firearms as well. Many of these 80% kits, as they are also referred to as. By the way, 80% is a very nebulous term. It's basically when a firearm manufacturer makes an 80% receiver, there's not a super clear definition of, this thing here is 80%, but this thing over here is 81%, and therefore is over 80% and not legal, or therefore has to be regulated at that point. But basically the idea is, as a general rule, if a firearm is finished beyond 80%, it's got to be serialized. And that happens in the manufacturing process. Got companies that make firearms, companies that make silencers, and other similar products that are regulated and have a serial number attached to them that when they reach a certain point in the manufacturing process, they have to be serialized and therefore are kept track of and are recorded with the ATF. Okay. And by the way, we talked about some similar, things to this, like some of the manufacturing side, the FFL side of this with Ryan Kleckner in last week's podcast episode 8, I believe it was. So anyway, that's kind of, where we're at, right? Like that's sort of the backstory, if you will. And basically the Biden administration has made it very clear that they would like to make illegal the idea of so-called ghost guns. Okay. Now, whether they can actually do that or how far they can take that, that's certainly up for debate. But what is clear is the ATF is proposing, okay, I'm going to quote part of the proposed new rule. More than one externally visible part may house or hold a fire control component on a particular firearm, such as with a split or modular frame or receiver. Under these circumstances, ATF may determine whether a specific part or parts of the weapon is the frame or receiver, which may include an internal frame or chassis at least partially exposed to the exterior to allow identification. And so what they're basically looking to do is that they're trying to expand what parts would be considered receivers or frames. They're trying to expand the category of parts, if you will, that would have to be serialized and therefore controlled as a firearm. And therefore, and then what does that require? It would require those types of parts or products to be purchased through a federally licensed dealer. Okay. And by so doing, for instance, I could see how this might be, where this might be taken, is that they would be, say, take a Polymer 80 kit, right? The Polymer 80 kits have a little metal piece in the bottom part of the Picatinny rail that's intended, if you want to do so, to add a serial number to. By the way, you could actually be you could be an FFL dealer and take Polymer 80 kits and turn those into firearms and serialize them and then turn around and sell those completely as normal firearms that are recorded on as part of the purchase through a 4473 and all that, right? Like that's totally an option. I think what ATF is trying to do is to require more and more things, such as like these kits, to actually be serialized earlier on, or maybe certain parts like maybe the frame rails. I did say externally visible part. Now, those frame rails aren't really visible, but I think they're trying to find loopholes, if you will, of how they can classify a greater category of kits or firearm parts to now be considered receivers or frames, to therefore be required to be serialized and controlled and only sold through dealers. It's been proposed or suggested this might extend to things like the upper receiver on like an AR-15 style rifle. Okay. Which currently up to this point, a lower receiver is what was serialized and recorded as a firearm. Okay. Because it's saying multiples of parts or frames or receivers. Okay. More than one externally visible part may. Okay. And so that would change the whole game as it relates to, what we can buy and how we buy things like upper receivers, assembled uppers, that kind of stuff for an AR-15 or similar rifles or guns. So, all right. So here's the deal. That's, we could go into the weeds on this further, but, we don't have all the time in the world to do that. We'd have a few other stories to cover. But here's the deal. As of a few weeks ago, the ATF opened up public comment. It's what's called a public commenting period for a proposed new rule. The ATF is proposing these new rules. But when they do this, they open it up for comment. They did something similar with pistol braces, which got a lot of attention from the Second Amendment community. Many people, myself included, submitted comments saying that we disagreed with the proposed rule changes with respect to, where they were trying to basically reclassify pistol braces as stocks, right? And that sort of thing. And so right now, the comment period is open to where this is your opportunity to voice your feelings and opinions on this proposed rule change. All right. And I'm doing everything I can to make this as simple as possible for you guys. Now, here's the thing. Before I give you a link, okay, because I create a special short link for you to use to make it easy so you can go to the page and submit a comment. But before you do this, please, please, please be respectful in your language in submitting your comment, okay? If you are not professional, if you don't sound intelligent, if you don't make clearly articulable, fact-based points as to why you believe this proposed rule change is wrong or incorrect to do, ATF's not going to listen to it. In fact, they're very clear. They under the submit a comment section, there's basically guidelines for what you need to consider when you submit those comments. But if you get in there and you're dropping F-bombs and other inappropriate, profane language and being overly combative, attacking the ATF, that sort of thing in your comment that you submit, they're going to disregard it, okay? And it doesn't reflect very, very well on the rest of us as fellow Second Amendment supporters. So this has to be handled appropriately, professionally, with well thought out, articulated points, okay? So to make it super simple and easy on you guys, and I think I'd like to consider even having a page, Matthew. There's other companies that are doing this where they sort of like give you a template, if you will. I just haven't been able to throw that together yet, but we can look at that. But for right now, we have a short link for you. Okay, just to make this easy, because some of you are listening to the podcast audio only. But if you go to concealedcarry.com/80% comments, and that is the letter or the number 8, the number 080% comments. That short link will take you right to the ATF's page, and you'll see that there's the summary of the proposed rules, and then you can click the button how to submit a comment, and that'll take you to the comment page where you can follow the guidelines for submitting a comment and submit a comment. And I would ask that you please do so, because I believe it was because of the many comments that were submitted in support of pistol braces continuing to be pistol braces that got the ATF to back down on that initiative. All right. And we need to make our voices heard on this issue as well. It's very, very, very important, because this just very clearly further restricts Second Amendment rights, your ability and right as an American citizen to make your own firearm. So go to concealedcarry.com/80% 80PERCENTCOMMENTS, concealedcarry.com/80% comments, and please submit your comment today. All right. Comments from you, Matthew? I know I kind of
no. I mean, I can't really add anything. It is going to increase the cost for the average gun owner to buy, to get a firearm, because you can't put it together yourself. It infringes obviously on the rights, and I'm not convinced that doing this will significantly decrease any sort of crime rate or anything like that. So it seems like it's a failed. It's an effort that will be in vain, but only will affect negatively the people that want to buy firearms or make their own firearms for personal defense. So,
and here you're exactly right. Like, criminals by definition break the law and will continue to do so for all time and in history. Like, that's what bad people do. What's silly about all of this is, hey, let's take 80%, kits and lowers and that sort of thing off the market, or make them regulated. And that's going to suddenly mean these criminals can't obtain them and build their own Glocks and stuff. That's very wishful thinking, because we're already at a place right now in our history with technology the way it is that doesn't matter. They can go for $800, they can go buy a pretty decent 3D printer and 3D print all the same stuff. By that meaning essentially the frame. And with very crude tools can fashion pretty much everything else to make that lower frame work as a frame, and then buy everything else and assemble the gun. Okay. So it's wishful thinking. I agree with you. It will not do anything to change or reduce violent criminal acts and the proliferation of criminally possessed firearms. So, and you can go to any country outside of the United States that has very strict gun control laws, and you'll still find many, many illegal firearms on the streets, including some very creative people that sometimes very crudely make their own firearms from the most basic of parts. You can regulate this all you want, and that sort of thing will still exist. All righty, let's move on to Matthew. Why don't you tell us about the constitutional carry bill in jeopardy with threat of governor's veto out of Louisiana? This, according to an article you wrote on louisiana.concealedcarry.com.
Yeah, just this morning I wrote this. So Senate Bill 118 in Louisiana, it is a constitutional carry bill. So this year already, 6 states have passed legislation and sent it to the governor's desk for signature. 6 states in this year alone, which is unprecedented. 4 of them have already been signed into legislation by the governor. One of them, Texas, is still awaiting Governor Abbott's signature. And this one in Louisiana has been sent to John Bell Edwards' desk for signature. The House Bill 124, it was passed, it was in the House 73-26 and in the Senate 27-9. So by far, majorities in both chambers. But he has made statements in the past indicating that he's probably going to veto the bill. Even if he does, it seems to be that, the legislature has enough votes, given what they voted for, provided they don't lose, votes in the process, but to override if they wanted to override the governor's veto. But we'll have to see. There's no craziness involved in the bill. It's a straight constitutional carry bill, which would remove the permit requirement. It wouldn't do away with the permitting, system or program, because obviously, there's still reasons to get a permit, even if your state has constitutional carry. If you travel to other states that don't, you may want to have a permit that has reciprocity with that state. So there's that. And part of the bill also, if it gets vetoed, there was some language in the bill in the previous concealed carry bill that basically was in conflict if you were a concealed carrier with a firearm and possessed another weapon like a knife. So it was criminalizing, and that wasn't the intent of the bill. It just was poorly worded, and so this bill would also fix that. So hopefully, if he does veto it, it gets overridden. But yeah, we'll have to see. But that would be that's crazy. That would be the 6th state this year alone.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I understand that sometimes governors will veto things, based on principle, because for whatever reason, that's what they personally believe, feel, whatever. In this case, this bill was passed by basically very near a 75% majority in the House, and about the same in the Senate. I mean, it was very overwhelmingly popular, this constitutional carry bill. So the governor choosing to veto the bill would likely see that overturned, would be my guess. So kind of a fruitless effort on his part. I know he says that he feels like the majority of people in Louisiana don't necessarily want this bill, but I would say that 75% of their House and Senate would disagree with that. And those are people that are elected from their respective districts to represent and be their voice in those legislative bodies. So the governor is just one man, and we have checks and balances in our federal and many of our state governments in this country, and that's a very good thing. But super crazy. I agree that in about a period of 6 months, we see 6 states pass constitutional carry bills. Again, as you mentioned, Texas being only one. In fact, that's our next story here. Texas being one that's passed, and Governor Abbott says that he's going to sign the bill. I don't know why he hasn't yet, but we're going to talk about that. And of course, the other one here being Louisiana, which looks like maybe a veto, but likely overruled. And we'll try to keep you updated on that. Probably our next legislative update episode. Perhaps we'll have, at that point, perhaps we can report that, hey, vetoed but overturned in the case of this one. And let's jump now to this Texas one. This has made a lot of waves. I've seen a lot of social media posts about it. People really cheering on the great state of Texas for passing this bill. It's been somewhat controversial. I've even seen some controversial comments from instructors in Texas that are against this bill. And we typically see that in any number of the states that pursue constitutional carry legislation. There will usually be a relatively minority contingent of firearms instructors, because
their livelihood.
It impacts they perceive their livelihood, their ability to teach concealed carry classes, and so it hurts the bottom line, and so therefore they're against it. They'll say it's based off of other things, but really at the core of it, it's a money related thing. And we don't need to go into that and totally debate that side of things, but this has gathered a lot of attention, both on the for and against sides of this bill. But overwhelmingly, from what I've seen out there, people have been very excited to see Texas pass this legislation. Texas, for as much love as it gets from the general public, the general public's perception of Texas being a very pro-gun state, it's had some interesting laws in the past. It wasn't that many years ago that you couldn't openly carry in the state of Texas, at least easily. Then you had to get a permit to do so. Okay. It's even up until, even as of now, because this law has yet to go into effect yet, you still have to have a license to carry, which is what a permit in Texas is called, to actually carry openly. And that probably is a surprise to some people. Like, wait, I thought open carry, I thought that was just a thing in a state like Texas, right? Isn't everybody wearing a 6-shooter on their hip?
Right.
But the truth is with respects to at least carrying a gun openly or even concealed, Texas has been a little more strict in that regard than maybe some other also pro-gun states. This is a big change, because even in the way the license to carry program is administered in the state of Texas, meaning that they have a dictated curriculum, a state mandated curriculum. You have, as an instructor, you have to get approval. You have to go through training. You have to like drive to Austin to go to LTC instructor school, if you will. Like it's a process. Like they've had a very controlled process over who can teach LTC classes, how those classes are taught, a certain qualification course of fire that every student has to shoot. That's very meaningless and pointless because it's overly simple. And you had to do all that to apply for and get a permit in Texas to carry concealed or openly. And so to go from that to constitutional carry, baby, is a big step, I think, and it's the right step, especially for Texas.
Yeah. So, governor, sign it. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it's weird. Like you and I were talking before the show. Like it's been a couple of weeks now.
Yeah. Since
the law was passed, and it made waves through the news and media and social media, but it's yet, as of today, it's yet to be signed by him, even though Governor Abbott has indicated that he will sign it. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of like, well, what, has he been on vacation for 2 weeks or what? Like how hard is it to sign the bill?
Right.
That seems kind of odd to me. So, but presumably he's going to sign it. So presumably we all believe it's going to go into effect. Anyway, we'll update you once it's officially signed into law, which again, it looks like it's going to be. So next up, Matthew, explain to us this whole Montana deal. So there's been some stuff going on in Montana this legislative session, both dealing with constitutional carry as well as carrying on college campuses in the state of Montana.
Yeah, so I'll just give you the brief overview. Earlier this year, Montana was one of the states that passed constitutional carry. It's House Bill 102, and it got passed, and it's been in effect. And so, let me put it. It was going to go into
effect on June 1st.
On June 1st, right? It was supposed to go into effect on June 1st. Part of that bill allowed permitless carry, constitutional carry on campuses, college campuses, not K through 12, but college campuses. And as the legislation was being crafted, they got with what I presume to be several of the universities' board of regents, and kind of crafted this legislation to in conjunction with them, so it would go smoothly, so they wouldn't be caught off guard, and they would have some say. So part of that legislation talked about, it said the measure forbids the state university from restricting firearm possession on campuses beyond the following: requiring gun owners to have safety training, like a hunter's education course. They would require the firearms be transported in cases or stored with gun locks. The university system would also be allowed to forbid gun possession by students who have been formally disciplined for substance abuse or whatever interpersonal violence means, and then prohibit possession by attendees at football games and other events that were supervised by armed security guards. So there were some restrictions on college campuses. But I would assume, or what I'm getting from this is Montana's constitution says that the board of regents of these universities has basically authority to govern what happens on college campuses, almost not autonomously, but they have more control than.
Yeah, it says that it's written into the Montana Constitution,
right,
that the state board of regents has that authority to to regulate, if you will, what happens on public campuses.
Yeah. So a few days ago, I believe it was the 26th, the board of regents wanted to file or took a case up to the Supreme Court to say we want an injunction on this because on this law we don't want people carrying on campus. We don't want them carrying concealed on campus, and the Supreme Court refused to hear the case. They said it's not urgent. Go back to the district court. So they did. And I believe a couple of days later, a district judge ruled and put in a temporary injunction on the law until a June 7th. So 4 days from now, a June 7th hearing where they're going to decide, hash out, what's going to happen in the future, if this is going to go into effect or not. So in the meantime, it's on hold. But what kind of struck me is they made it a point to say when they were crafting this law that they worked with the Board of Regents to make a law that would be acceptable to them. And now it seems like things have kind of fallen off the track. So hopefully they get this squared away, because that's got to be a tough thing to have a law that's signed in and now there's an injunction. And you know how it is. Like in Colorado, I think you guys had like injunctions with magazine limits and all kinds of different things, and it confuses people as to what the law actually is.
Yeah, but that's the sort of thing that happens with these highly politicized, issues. It's sad because you have this Board of Regents that is overly concerned. And I say overly because it's true. Overly concerned about this idea of students or others being able to carry firearms on campus. And they're overly concerned because there's plenty of data out there and numerous case studies of other states that have permitted carrying of firearms on college campuses for a number of years, in some cases for a couple of decades, such as like Utah. Idaho now has had campus carry for a few years. Texas has had campus carry for a few years. Kansas, Missouri. I'm trying to remember others. I know there's others, right? And golly, we're sure not hearing about all these worst case scenarios that these Board of Regents and similar governing authorities over schools in various states have, when this type of issue is brought up. So, they have all these concerns, but really those concerns are non-concerns, I believe, in practice because of the examples we have from other states. But that's the way it goes. So, they tried to take it up to Supreme Court. State Supreme Court's like, no, start with the lower court like you're supposed to, which in this case is a county district court. And it was that judge that said, okay, we're going to put a temporary injunction on this and set a hearing date on June 7th. So that's the way it's going to go. Is it's going to have to be heard at the lower court, at the district court level. Depending on how that goes, it'll probably then be fought up to the Supreme, the state court, the Supreme Court. From there, probably a state appeals court. Probably from there, a federal court. If it's going to go that far, which certainly it has that possibility. So we'll try to keep you apprised. But for now, the constitutional carry bill in the state of Montana. Now, the constitutional carry piece of it, and that's one thing I haven't seen a lot of reporting on, Matthew. In your research, you can help clarify this perhaps if you're aware, but basically, we're talking two issues here: constitutional carry for the state of Montana and campus carry, right, which I believe is what this is specifically dealing with. My understanding as of right now is that constitutional carry is in effect as of June 1st in the state of Montana. But we would read constitutional carry, and that's the way this law was written, that, well, anywhere that, that you would, basically any public sphere in the state of Montana, you can assume you can carry even without a permit. But for now, not college campuses. Public, and again, let's be clear, this is public colleges and university campuses.
Correct.
Which is usually how these laws are written and are applied. That's the case in Idaho. It's the case in Utah. It's the case. Colorado. Geez, there's another example of a state that's had campus carry for like freaking ever, and like nothing to show for it. Okay. So anyway. So there you go. That is all the stories that we have time to cover today, guys. Let us hear from you if you have other issues or things you feel like we missed or want to bring something to our attention. You can always contact us at podcast@concealedcarry.com. And now we're towards the end. We got to announce our weekly giveaway winner. So each week we have a revolving door of entries and winners for our weekly podcast giveaway. That podcast giveaway now extends to all podcasts in our podcast network, in case you're not aware. So each week you can go to concealedcarry.com/podcast prize is the short link, and you can sign up for the weekly giveaway. You got to do it though each week. Okay. From basically, what is it? Is it midnight Tuesday night, or is that when it cut off is?
We're doing Monday to Monday.
Monday to Monday.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So each week, sometime during that window of time, you've got to go to concealedcarry.com/podcast prize, fill out the little form there, sign up for the weekly giveaway if you want to be considered for that week's drawing. All right. So no purchase required, it'll just ask for your email. And if you want to get extra entries, you can share it on Facebook and that kind of thing. Okay. And you'll get extra entries and more chances to win. This week, we were giving away a Ready Up Gear MCF Spark flashlight. Okay. That's, I just pulled this off my pants. So that's what I was carrying with me here today. 550 lumens, pretty decent throw. It's not the most powerful light in the world. But this has, for me, become very much an EDC light. I have other lights I also carry that are better performing, but this guy here is like a ton of performance in a very small package, and it gets used. I reserve my bigger, more powerful lights for actual tactical applications. This is like my true EDC light because it's so easy to carry around, but still has very, very good performance. I just dropped it. Hey, another drop test. Let's see if it works. Oh, snap.
There you go.
When we were testing these things out, I dropped my test unit a bunch. It was all dinged up pretty good, and I did runtime tests with it, leaving it on like constantly, sometimes doing back to back. Just like, the thing was like steaming hot, and I was just like, is this thing going to fry, fizz out, catch on fire, anything like that? And it took everything I threw at it. So anyway, MCF Spark flashlight from Ready Up Gear. This week's winner, please, Matthew, drum roll.
This week's winner, Mr. Daniel S. You are the lucky winner.
Daniel S. Congratulations, Daniel. We'll get you sent out a Ready Up Gear MCF Spark flashlight. MCF, by the way, stands for modular. There we go. I was going to say miniature, but it's modular compact flashlight, because miniature compact wouldn't make much sense. Yeah, modular compact flashlight. So anyway, check it out. By the way, if you're interested in the MCF Spark, go to readyupgear.com. You'll find it there on the website. Now, for this coming week, Matthew, we're giving away what?
A Draw Like a Pro course with none other than Riley T. Bowman.
Oh, yeah. Online video training course. It's a fun one. It kind of took a little bit of a different approach than some of our other training videos. So, yeah, enjoy that. All right. So, one lucky winner, the Draw Like a... is that an actual physical... do we even have that?
Yeah, I think it's a digital.
That's the online streaming, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think it's like a $19.99 value or thereabouts. Mm-hmm. So, cool, guys. If you'd like to have a chance at winning your own online copy of, and you can stream it anytime on pretty much any device, go to, again, concealedcarry.com/podcast prize to sign up for the weekly giveaway to have a chance to win Draw Like a Pro. So with that, we're at the end. Guys, we're going to be back here very shortly with our second episode for today. So we'll look forward to seeing you back. For all those of you in podcast land out there listening, we'll see you in a couple of days when the next episode's released. So until then, though, don't forget, train right, train often, and train safe so that you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.